Hey, Global Village. Okay, I want to talk about a very interesting question raised by Dimitri Lascaris of Reason to Resist fame. He basically said that there's a lot of hot debate in Iran, and I think further abroad as well, in fact, as to whether they should in fact have entered into negotiations with regards to the MOU. And it seems that there are a sizable cohort of people who believe that it was a mistake and that it's simply giving the US and Israel time to rearm and regroup, to, I guess, resupply the global oil market, just enough that they can then go for another round. And I have to admit, there is definitely some level of logic to that. If you consider, for example, the fact that if Iran had just kept up the pressure and not allowed for the US and Israel to regroup, maybe they may have been able to push their advantage even further and therefore perhaps more conclusively ended this conflict when they did enter into negotiations. So it is a position worth considering. Now, all that said, I actually want to put the case forward that it probably was a good idea to enter into negotiations. And again, I realise that this requires a certain amount of speculation and rationalisation, and of course I may be completely wrong. But nonetheless, I'm going to do my best to state why I think it was, on balance, not a bad idea. So the first thing to consider is that Iran were also under heavy pressure and had taken a lot of damage, both militarily and financially. You know, what the US and Israel inflicted upon Iran is not to be diminished. Now, I think it is fair to say that Iran's ability to keep launching missile attacks was impressive and demonstrated the fact that they are far more resilient and that they had a far more robust defense system than the US and Israel had given them credit for. Nonetheless, they were put under significant pressure, and by entering into these negotiations, it's not just the US and Israel that have been given an opportunity here to regroup and rearm. It's also true for Iran as well. They have had, I believe, that they are likely receiving material support from both Russia and China. So it's not like they've just been sitting on their hands, and I have little doubt that they are preparing for a second round of conflict and are going to be up to the task. And perhaps having this time is exactly what they needed to be just even more prepared the second time around. The next thing to consider here is that this is obviously an asymmetrical conflict, and one of the weaknesses on the Western imperial side is the deep cost and inefficiency built into their arms and weapons industry. The missiles that Trump has been burning through, the Tomahawks, their cruise missiles, they cost millions of dollars even just per unit. So the overall cost that they've sustained in this conflict compared to the cost that Iran has sustained in expending its weaponry is, differentiated by many, many orders of magnitude. So for the US to go a second round, they are going to have to spend even more and deplete their stockpiles even more, because it's important to understand a lot of these missiles are not replaceable in a few weeks or even a few months. Probably they would need a good couple of years to try and get themselves back to where they were in terms of their existing stockpile and arsenal. So the US has to ask themselves very carefully, given what happened in the first round of conflict, whether further depleting their stockpile against an adversary that seems very capable of withstanding the type of assault they put on them the first time around is actually an even remotely smart thing to do. So when people say that the decision for US to engage in the negotiations and sign the MOU was a cynical ploy just to allow them time to prepare for a second round, I don't quite buy that narrative. I think it's more likely that Trump realized he had been duped by Netanyahu and that he was entering into a quagmire of a conflict and is genuinely very motivated to get out of it. So there is at least a semblance of sincerity here, in as much as he would rather just not be in a war that ultimately he cannot win, not strategically. Yes, the US can inflict horrendous damage to Iran, but the further they go up the escalation ladder, the greater the mess is going to be as Iran inflicts that same damage onto the GCC states. And of course, we know how that's going to play out. It's going to cause a humanitarian crisis within the Middle East. It's going to cause a global financial crisis, the likes of which none of us have seen before in our lifetimes. And there's really no way out of that. That is the inevitable result of continuing to escalate the conflict. So Trump can, post psychotic tweets on his social media platform all he wants, but it doesn't change the reality of what he's actually facing. And I think in the cold light of day, he knows that, which really means that a lot of their rhetoric is hot air and simply designed for domestic consumption to make him sound as if he's in a much stronger position than he really is. So yeah, that's my view on it. I think all is not yet lost. I think the biggest problem here by far is Israel and Lebanon, and I think they are the big spoilers here. And if anything, the unwillingness of Israel to actually de-escalate and allow diplomacy to have its way is probably what will result in the conflict firing back up again. But I don't think it's actually what Trump or the majority of his advisors actually want. Of course, there are chicken hawks who do want it. If John Bolton was in control, in charge of things, there would be no MOU, and we'd already have a Vietnam-like situation going on. Anyway, I just wanted to add my thoughts on that. Bendy out.